Cancer is going to knock you down, and there are going to be bad days, and there are going to be bad weeks. It's not about how brave you are or positive you are. It's how do you pick up the pieces? How do you put it back together when it feels like everything's falling apart? I don't think I'll ever value money over experiences. Now, obviously, one engenders the other in certain ways, but really comes down to a life philosophy. What do you place value on? What do you want to do?
Welcome to the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. Your guide on this journey is Amy Silvas. If you're ready for the secrets to an abundant life, hit that subscribe button now, and let's get started.
Secrets to Abundant Living podcast listeners, I am overjoyed to welcome you to another episode today. My name is Amy Silvas. I am the founder and CEO of Silvas Capital, and I have the privilege of welcoming Bryan to join us today. Bryan, you and I I've been a fan for a long time. I knew you from college, a little bit of an age difference, but gosh, you've got just such an incredible story. So I'm delighted to host you today. Tell our fans a little bit about yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
Thanks, Amy. I'd love to. And thanks for having me on the show, by the way. Hi, my name is Bryan Bishop. I've known Amy off and on for, I guess, since college, technically, because you were a little bit younger than me, but we overlapped by, I think, a year or so. Yeah. And knew a lot of the same people. And it's funny, you were rattling off some names of people who were, mutual friends that we have and people who we would hang out with. It's funny, I don't know if you remember, I don't know why you would, you had no reason to know this, but I was the rush chair of my senior year when a lot of those guys were freshmen, and I brought them in. I didn't bring them in, but I, was the rush chair when they joined. So I feel a special level of connection and affection for those guys. And please tell them I said hi if you ever run into them. But I guess you and I probably found ourselves at a lot of USC football tailgates over the years together with all the same people. And it's been nice to catch up.
I appreciate that. Yes, for those who don't know, we went to USC. I had the great fortune of going to a high school where a bunch of guys actually pledged that frat. So I think that's how we first connected. But yes, as we talked about before we got started, the real genesis of this podcast is I speak to so many high net worth folks that have reached where culture taught them that they should go, right? They earn the money, they put in the time, they sacrifice their health, they sacrifice their relationships, they sacrifice, maybe their sanity. Yeah. They're sitting on a big pile of money and they're going, well, wait a minute, I'm not happy. I don't feel fulfilled. So conversations with really fascinating folks as yourself, our listeners give us great feedback. And for those who don't know you, you've got quite the story in several dimensions. And so I'd love to hear, you've published a book, you're a public personality, persona. Tell us a bit more about what your journey has been like since you and I last connected in undergrad.
Sure. It's everything you said is true. I'm sorry that I can't add to your list of high net worth individuals. No, we'll talk anyway. And everything you said is correct. Yes, where do I start? Yeah, so I maybe am best known for, I was on the Adam Carolla Show for 16 years, back since when I was a radio show syndicated out of Los Angeles here, and then followed him over to when he started doing it as a podcast. It became a pretty successful podcast, so that was an exciting ride and really cool and so fun. I got to meet so many great people, both listeners and guests and friends of the show, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did that for a long time, and that ended, I guess, almost 2 years ago now. And yes, you mentioned I wrote a book. I'll get to that in a second, because I was diagnosed in 2009 with an inoperable brain tumor. And at the time, I was given 6 months to live. I was due to be married. I was engaged to be married in 2 months from that diagnosis date. And things were looking pretty bleak, as you can imagine. But crazy things happen. And I beat it. I'm still here 15 plus years later, and wrote a book about the experience. with very humble, modest expectations. And it became a success. It actually became a New York Times bestseller called Shrinkage. And you can get it, I guess, on Amazon. I don't get any, I don't get any kickbacks from your Amazon purchases. So, get it wherever you can. It's been a crazy ride. And, that lovely fiance of mine that I married 2 months after diagnosis is still my wife, amazingly, shockingly. And we are happy to have a lovely little life here in LA with an 8-year-old daughter.
Yes.
That was a real leap of faith, as you can imagine, a cancer patient with no guarantees, deciding to, have a kid midway through, well into treatment and everything. Is a crazy journey, as you can imagine, but worked out so far. I mean, she's a pain in my ass, but she's great. No, talk about my wife and my daughter. No, my daughter Tessa is wonderful, and she's 8 years old, and she's a Spitfire. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey. So happy to share the story with whoever wants to hear it.
I appreciate it. That's just remarkable. As you know, as my listeners know, I live with cystic fibrosis. I've had some health struggles of my own. I can't fathom what it must have been like because you were pretty public with that journey, correct? You were on, yeah. So to go through that, but also have millions of people follow along, participate. How were you able to balance those things, or was it a balance? Or was it just something you just felt was natural to share the journey with folks?
There was never really a hesitation. So when I was diagnosed, so it's a weird timeline. The radio show that I was on was a pretty popular radio show, but it ended in February of 2009.
Right.
And I was diagnosed in April of 2009.
Okay.
And Adam Carolla had just started dipping his toe into podcasting. It wasn't even like a full show, you know what I mean? It was just putting out a few episodes here and there. But there were people who were following, fans of ours, and it was never, as best I can recall, it was never really a question of whether or not to go public, be public with my journey and our journey, our diagnosis and our struggle and everything. Because I remember from a practical perspective, at the time, I was just like, I don't want, if I was to keep this to myself, number one, that's a huge emotional burden. Like, that just weighs on you. And when you're trying to like heal and go through treatment and all the stuff that is associated with that, that's a headache you don't need. Or at least I didn't need. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be living with this crippling secret that only a few people in our lives knew. And number two, I practically didn't want to, I was cognizant and afraid of, the day that, I would get recognized in public from time to time at that point. And I was afraid for the day that someone would see me down 20 pounds and, my eyebrows are all gray, from the treatment and everything. And it's like, holy crap, can I curse on this?
Oh yeah. What are you going to do?
Holy what happened to Bryan? All of a sudden, it's on the, her internet message boards at the time or whatever.
Right.
And I just didn't want to, it's another example of, I didn't want to be burdened with that secret. You know what I mean? That sort of, just the burden of knowing there's something you're trying to keep from people, especially when it's something health related. I can only imagine, Hollywood stars of the 1930s, having to hide the fact that they were gay, perhaps, or whatever. Like, living with that burden is crazy. I can't imagine how that would manifest itself in all sorts of problems for health-wise and mental and emotional. And then on top of that, what I didn't anticipate was, and I should have, but I was in cancer battle mode. I didn't anticipate, upon announcing everything that was going on with me, the outpouring of support and how healing that is to have that. Just knowing that people are rooting for you, or I would get 10 emails or tweets a day or whatever it was at the time, just to people saying, "Hey man, thinking about you, thinking about your fiance and you, and hoping things go well and all for you." So it it was incredibly heartwarming.
I love that. I definitely resonate with that. It is an interesting thing that people have to decide. Obviously, not everyone has a platform or is as public as you, but to decide, what will I be public? What will I say? But highlighting the blessings of the support and not being burdened by having to keep a secret. It makes sense.
Not just that, but also, I mean, I guess footnote to that, adjacent to it is, one forgets how, when you do at the time a radio show and later on a podcast, and that's listened to by a number of people, you forget the emotional connection that you're making with people. Like, you're in their ears, you're in their car, you're in their homes. It took something like my diagnosis and the outpouring of support to open my eyes to that. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, wow, my story is really affecting people.
Fascinating. That is really interesting. Yeah, people are developing a relationship with you and you don't even know them, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't still have an impact. That's amazing.
Yeah, the universal through line and theme, or over the years, I mean, not just in 2009 when I was diagnosed, but including up till now, the through line and the theme has been, I feel like I know you. That's what people say. And it's like, yeah, I guess you do. Like, I'm in your ear for anywhere between 2 and 4 hours. Granted, it's Adam's show, but we're all revealing things about ourselves, and you don't even realize how the things you discuss and joke about are actually very telling about your personality and your values and all those things. So at the end of it all, people feel a real connection. And I think that's the power of what you're doing. None of us have a platform like Adam Carolla, for example,
right.
But even what you're doing, and everyone who is trying to make this thing work, like, you're connecting to people. You know what I mean? It's connecting, but also enlightening people and sharing and weird ways and exchange of ideas. It's great. I'm happy to be a part of it.
One can only hope. I love that. So I'm picturing you getting this diagnosis. I remember other people calling you Bish, so I'm going to call you Bish, even though I know your name is Bryan. This is just to give context to other people. I'm not even thinking. But I'm picturing you getting this diagnosis. You're told you have 6 months to live. You mentioned you're going into cancer fighting mode. Obviously, I'm sure there's a bunch of things going through your brain, tactically, practically, emotionally. How at that point in your life, obviously this podcast we talk about abundance, but how do you create abundance in your life? How do you define abundance in your life at that time during this journey at the beginning? And how did it evolve?
It's interesting. I never have thought about that point in our lives as being a period of abundance, obviously, for many reasons, not just the diagnosis, not just the struggle and the fear that we were going through, but also it was early 2009. If you cast our memory back to early 2009, it was a pretty rough time for the economy.
Yes.
I had just lost my radio show. My wife had just been laid off from her high-paying job. We were both unemployed. I'm facing cancer treatment. I mean, it was hairy stuff. So I would not nominally call that an abundant period of our lives, but there's always, there's another side to every coin, right? So what we lacked in maybe material abundance, we lived in a 2-bedroom, I moved into her 2-bedroom apartment. It was frankly pretty crappy. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't luxurious by any stretch of the imagination. I tell a funny story. So my, at the time, girlfriend, then fiance, then wife, I made the decision at the point where we decided to move in together. The decision was made to move into her place for a lot of reasons. It was nicer than mine. It was close to the radio station where I worked. And it was Beverly Hills adjacent, which to people outside the area maybe sounds glamorous. It was not. Beverly Hills adjacent meant that it was on a street that bordered a bunch of tennis courts. And the Beverly Hills adjacent literally meant one side of the street was Beverly Hills and the other side was just LA. Our side was LA, right? The city of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Ever more apparent than when the city of Beverly Hills decided to repave their streets. They'd paved half the street of the street that we lived on. So the other half that was on the other side of the street facing Beverly Hills was nice and paved, and the side of the street that was literally butting up against our apartment block was just, crappy old LA streets like that. That's how petty and
Petulant, yeah.
and what a stark divide it is between the haves and the have-nots out here.
Crazy.
If I didn't say it clearly enough before, yes, it was a great period of abundance in our lives, just from the abundance of love and support and community and the things that really matter, quote unquote, as you say, like we got married, despite my diagnosis, despite everything. And it was a beautiful wedding. And we went on a honeymoon. There was a beautiful honeymoon that we had no business going on or paying for at that point. But it was like, hey, and this has been our attitude, I think, in life, talking about my wife and I, both then and now, which is life's worth living, man. Like, these windows and these opportunities come and go, and they don't come around that often, frankly. So what do you, it wasn't ever a question really, but looking back, what are you going to do? Like, skip your honeymoon and always look back with, oh man, that sucked. Like, we got married and canceled our honeymoon. It's like, no, we're going to go. And frankly, I look back on the honeymoon and, this is just my personality probably, but I only look back and think about the shortcomings and things that I wish I could have done, because I was pretty sick at that point.
I bet.
I had just completed radiation therapy and was continuing on chemotherapy, and it was a pretty rough time for me physically. So I look back on the things that I wish I could have done better, but at least there's something to look back on.
Love that. Yeah. Finding that glass half full, as corny as it sounds. And not, especially not knowing how long you had to take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah. I'll interrupt you only because
Please.
I think it's timely and apropos to what we're talking about and our backgrounds. I think my wife to a lesser degree, just because of, circumstances, but I think philosophically we were very similar. I had always been a person who I always felt like abundance had very little to do with money. And I look back on times when, you and I are big USC football fans, and USC's best years happened to overlap with some of my lowest earning years, let's just say. I was just out of college, just getting started in my life. Economy wasn't great, and I was barely getting by. And this is, 2001, 2002, 2003. And yet, despite all that, I look back and I'm still amazed that I didn't have a credit card. Thank God I didn't have a credit card, because God knows what kind of debt I would have gotten myself into. That said, with very meager part-time earnings at the time, I was able to figure out a way to go to the 2002 Orange Bowl in Miami. What business did I have flying to Miami and going, or this is the 2002 Orange Bowl, and yet I went anyway. I went to the 2004 Orange Bowl. I had no business going there, but I still did it because I love, the abundance in my life was experiences and looking back on these things where I would have regretted if I didn't go. I was a big USC football fan, and that was a big priority in my life at the time, which is weird to say, but it was. And I went to the, whatever, I think it was 2005 when USC played Virginia Tech at the FedEx Field. I'm not any kind of serious money. This is not an abundance thing where I'm throw money at it and just got, no, I figured out ways to go on the cheap and whatever, and resourcefully made it work. But that was the abundant philosophy of my life at the time. And it really still is, different circumstances, of course, but don't think I'll ever value money over experiences and over just a way to live life. Now, obviously, one engenders the other in certain ways, but it really comes down to a life philosophy, which is what do you place value in? You know, what do you want to do?
I love that. Yeah, we talk on the podcast, money, we're not fooling ourselves that money doesn't help us, get places, but it's the vehicle rather than the destination.
Yeah, it's supercharged what is kind of a philosophy in our lives, what I was just describing. Like, now that we have some money, now we can take our daughter to London and Paris, which we did last year, and she absolutely loved it, and she wants to go back, and she always talks about it.
I bet.
And showing her these incredible experiences. Again, not opulent, not like, just more about, I don't know about you, I didn't travel a lot as a kid. We were a very meager beginning with my family, and I never traveled internationally. I don't think I traveled internationally until I was married.
Amazing. Amazing. By the way, I was at that Virginia Tech game too, and I didn't realize that they actually did the hokey pokey. I don't know if you had the same amazing realization.
I don't think so. What do you mean, like they like the Virginia Tech fans?
Yeah, they're the Hokies, and they did the hokey pokey.
Well, I will say that as a result of my modest budget at the time, I was sitting pretty high up, so I don't think I got a really good view of what was happening. But I was there.
I love it. I love it. So you talk about maybe this evolution of abundance in your life, what this means, given maybe what you experienced working in the public eye, obviously your health challenges, having a daughter, maybe not knowing if you were able to have kids as a result of your treatments.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So how is that evolved? Yeah, please.
That's a whole story in and of itself. Mostly boring. What was the question? I'm sorry, say it again.
No, you're good. I mean, I'd love to hear that story too, but I was just curious how the definition of abundance has evolved in your life, given your experiences.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm tempted to say it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed that much. Like I alluded to a moment ago, the manifestation of abundance, how it manifests itself in our lives, has changed with higher earnings over the years or whatever, or smarter financial investments or whatever. But fundamentally, philosophically, it hasn't really changed. Also, this may be antithetical to the theme of your podcast, or even philosophies that some of your listeners or clients might have. But abundance doesn't equate to income and money and resources. Like, it's nice. It supercharges it and makes it more attainable and easier, frankly, to do these things. If we want to go to London and Paris with our daughter, we can do it. But I think I can't speak for my wife, but I'm pretty confident that we are more than fine. For example, I'm sitting in what I consider a pretty modest house, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, West LA house. Is nothing. Believe me, there are $6, $7, $8 million houses, a mile away. Like, there's some really nice, areas in this neighborhood in this area. But, I think that, the things that matter to us, or the things that we want to prioritize, are experiences, and that could be an outcome of our circumstance as it pertains to health. I.e., what's really important and what do you really value. I hope that people don't need something like that to land on and figure out what it is they really value, and hopefully they have a much easier path to that discovery. But when you discover it and when it becomes apparent to you, it makes your life a lot better.
Makes it easier too, I would argue. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it really is amazing when you have that clarity, because especially living in Los Angeles, for those who don't live here, there are a lot of kind of signals and pressures to live, all sorts of opulent and extravagant ways.
Sure.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but folks do often find that that's not really, what ends up making them happy. So
You love what? Go ahead, finish what you're saying.
No, I was just going to say, I love the fact that it sounds like you had this really grounded definition of abundance, and it's really carried you throughout your life, and you didn't need, your health challenge to necessarily ground you in that. It sounds like it's really just been a part of you.
That's interesting. I never really thought about that, but yeah, I don't know if I'd have as clear a identification of that value, or I've had it as early in my life. You know what I mean? Without it, it's a weird thing to think about, I guess. But yeah, would I have really nailed that down years ago without this? I don't know. I hope. I'd like to think I would, but this definitely sharpened the pencil.
Can you tell us about the story? You said it was probably not very interesting, but I want to hear the story about your daughter, if you don't mind sharing.
It is interesting in the sense that I don't think there are many versions of people having, fertility struggles. And I have been witness to many of them through friends and family and whatnot. So I'm very sensitive to that. Our experience was, I don't remember what year it was. It would have been 2014 or something around there. That we're at a point where we moved into our house in 2011, and around 2014, I think it wasn't even a biological imperative. I think my wife and I just logically looked at each other and looked at the calendars and realized how old we were. We're in our mid-30s, and we're like, if we're gonna have a kid, we should probably think about starting the process soon. And obviously, like you alluded to, having especially, well, I guess male or female it matters differently, but having the male in the partnership, the marriage, having gone through and still going through at the time extensive cancer therapy really complicates things. So we talked to our oncologist, who, footnote, has been our doctor since 2009. He's been with us through the worst of it, and has really seen some things. He's become a good friend over the years. So that's a really special relationship. So we relied on his expertise we went to see a fertility specialist, a pretty well-known one out here he was on the Kardashians, doing their fertility stuff. So
you're that guy, Bish? All right.
I'm really not. Well, it was years later that we saw the Kardashians in his office. We're like, that's our doctor. But we went to see fertility specialist and went through rounds and rounds of IUI, IVF, which it's I don't know if you have any experience with that world, but it is it's taxing. You know what I mean? It's not that it's, I'll leave it at that. It's taxing. It takes its toll, and it's not something you would want to do over and over and over again, because that means, frankly, it's not working. And that really, it packs an emotional wallop. So we went through a few rounds of each, no success. And so we sort of went back to the drawing board, as it were, talked to our oncologist, and we're like, because footnotes, I guess, background to all this, when I was first diagnosed, we were engaged and we didn't know what was going to happen. We were advised by several professionals to bank some sperm samples, in the event that this was to happen. I did. And, years later, those sperm samples were what we used for our IVF, our IUI, as those treatments didn't work, and as our samples were kind of dwindling, and frankly not that great quality anyway. And here it is 5-6 years later or whatever it is. We're fighting an uphill battle, and it's looking not so great. We go back to the drawing board and talk to my oncologist, and we're like, oh, what? I mean, is getting pregnant naturally or using sperm from today, is that on the table? And what was complicating things, well, many things, but one of the things that was mainly complicating things was I was on a very new medication, the medication that really turned things around for me in 2009 from when I was given 6 months to live till, then was a new medication that I just, through the, luck of the universe, just happened to respond really well to.
Wow.
Some people do, some people don't. And I was thankfully one of the ones that did. And it quite literally saved my life. So I'm on this medication indefinitely at that point, getting infusions every, few months. And it's not to be, I don't know if any of your listeners care about this or if they're doctors or whatever. Medication wasn't technically a chemotherapy. It was a blood vessel inhibitor that prevented, growth, blood from coming to the tumor, thereby enabling growth. So that's how they're able to control the growth of my brain tumor at the time.
Wow.
So I'm on this blood vessel inhibitor, and all the literature, all the research universally says if you're on chemotherapy, don't try to get pregnant. It's gonna, it will what's the word? Mutate, your sperm or your eggs. I guess if you're a woman.
Yeah.
The point is, it's bad news. Don't do it. But this isn't technically chemotherapy, as my oncologist and I are talking, and he's doing his best to be medically responsible, but also, be helpful and fair and even and judicious. And he, at the end of the day, he's like, there is no research on your drug that says it's a danger. Of course, there is potential for risk, and you have to be aware of that.
Right.
But I can't point to any stats or literature or data that say, don't do this. So we went through a long process of sending contemporaneous samples to like this fucking lab in like North Dakota. They literally sent me, it looked like a fire hydrant, like a plastic fire hydrant. It was honestly 18 inches, 2 feet off the ground.
Really?
This big. I'm making a motion here for those watching. And it was like, freeze dried, dry ice, all the stuff to keep keep the sample cool or fresh or whatever. And sent this ridiculous thing back via FedEx or whatever it was. And the lab ran all the tests, ran all the data, and long story short, sent it to my oncologist. And he was like, there's nothing here that would suggest imminent danger. So go for it, I guess. And long story short, we ended up getting pregnant naturally. And my wife, Christy, was pregnant by early 2016. Our daughter was born in September.
Incredible.
Really incredible. I mean, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to portray, our journey as incredibly difficult, because I know that some people experience a similar thing and the outcome is not as positive. Right. And so I'm very sensitive to that. I'm just, aware of the fact, believe me, every day, how lucky we were that things worked out.
I love to hear that. Wow. The emotional roller coaster of being diagnosed with and battling cancer, and then battling infertility, which, as you correctly said, in and of itself can be emotional, heartbreaking, tiresome, costly, all of those things. But to decide to face it head on, and now you have your amazing daughter. Was there ever a pause, given your prognosis, given your cancer battle of, hey, I don't know if this is the right choice for us, or was it, okay, all right.
Of course, that was the first year of our fertility, journey was just, is this the right thing to do? Or are you being responsible? You know what I mean? Like I don't remember specifically, but I remember generally we probably had a conversation of like, listen, it's not likely, but there's always the chance that I said to my wife, like, you could be raising this kid alone. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't being funny or overly dramatic, but I'm like, we have to acknowledge the possibility, factor into our decision this level of risk that is higher than most people.
Right.
So it's funny, back to the theme of, money doesn't make you happy and money doesn't mean abundance, but it engenders certain things. Like, we were able to do a lot of this because we were living pretty comfortably.
That makes sense. That, yeah,
So
I can see that.
I guess now that I think about it, your bank account, your savings account, the money that you have, the assets that you have, it's a tool in your tool belt. It's something on Batman's utility belt that he can pull out and fire at an enemy, because it makes it the reality is it makes your life easier, and it makes the things that you want to accomplish and experience easier.
It can. It definitely can. So fast forward to today, you and I were talking a little bit about the recent update in terms of the latest with your health. Do you mind sharing kind of the recent battle that you went through and what's going on there?
Yeah. So, it's a long story. I don't know if this is where the story begins. So during the pandemic, my tumor had a recurrence, and it was growing again, and I was put on some pretty toxic medication. It really took its toll. I mean, I was as sick and as doing as poorly physically as I'd been doing since 2009. It was a pretty low point for, compounded with the fact that we went through a global pandemic. That's a problem. But I recovered. I'm still recovering. Actually, I don't know if you know this. I lost 33 pounds unintentionally when I was on that medication. I was already a slender-ish guy. What I mean? I'm probably walking around at around 170. I'm 6 feet tall.
Wow.
And eventually, throughout the course of like 2020 and I guess into 2021, ended up losing 33 pounds thanks to this tough medication that I was on. But all's well that ends well. I'm recovered. I'm recovering. Still going to physical therapy 3 times a week, which makes my wife very happy. But there was, I guess it was announced. It came out that there was a drug company, a smallish one. I mean, not one of the major ones that everyone knows, but a company announced that, we have developed this treatment for brain tumors that is showing remarkable efficacy in trials, so much so, and I didn't actually know this, but apparently in FDA trials, when a medication shows really high efficacy, they will take people off the placebo and put them on the medication, because at that point, you're cheating people unintentionally.
Yeah.
So it was showing incredible results. They were, not to be too overly dramatic about it, but they were calling it a real game changer and the first treatment of its kind for people with my specific brain tumor, which is a glioma, form of GBM, a really deadly kind of brain tumor. And this was supposed to be, a game-changing treatment potentially, whereas these treatments didn't exist before. There was a lot of excitement. My doctor was excited. He only knew about the trials and the research and everything. And he said, my tumor was declared inoperable because it's in my brainstem, right? And there's cranial nerves that are surrounding this thing. And I was told early on in 2009, you can't even biopsy this at the risk of nicking cranial nerve, and you can no longer blink is too great. So we can't do that. Well, fast forward to 2022, I guess 2023, when this new medication comes out. Now it's in a weird wrinkle. It only works. It's only shown to work on tumors that have a specific mutation. It's called IDH1 or IDH2. And if you have that mutation, the medication is much more likely to work well. So my doctor says the only way to know is to biopsy your tumor. And I'm like, okay, well, I know the risks that you told us about 15 years ago. And he's like, actually, number one, biopsy technology has gotten a lot easier. We can do a needle biopsy that is much less invasive. And number two, over time, your tumor has shifted from right on your brainstem to just off the brainstem. So in the medulla, I guess he was saying, and he's like, we could get a sample from the needle biopsy from that area and really minimize the risk. I mean, it would still be a brain biopsy, and you still, have the resulting, whatever the resulting side effects were from the treatment, from the procedure, but it does not carry the huge risk that it once did. And so long story short, I went in and got a brain biopsy, whereas I thought that was once impossible.
Right.
And it came back, they sent it for, sequencing and testing and all sorts. They took literally a gram of material out of my brain. So it's a very, very small sample, but they were able to get it sequenced and tested. And it finally came back, yes, I did have the mutation that was necessary. And so there was my doctor, like, this is amazing news. As soon as this medication gets approved by the FDA, we're going to try and get you on it right away. Because the side effects are minimal, people tolerate it well. The effect is mostly great. And so, again, long story short, it got approved a couple, 2-3 months ago. And to record this, I got where I literally got a call out of the blue because my doctor applied for it. Of course, they got denied. And so there was the appeal process, and I got a call out of the blue from the hospital pharmacy here in LA. They're just saying, hey, we're calling about your new prescription. I'm like, okay, is it approved? And they're like, yeah, you'll get it in a couple of days. And so I started it November 1st, and here we are. That's my new routine.
I didn't know I could have so many goosebumps, Bish. I didn't know it was physically possible.
Thanks. Yeah,
Exciting.
It's a wild journey. And I mean, I for time efficiency, I'm not dragging out every detail, but even the appeal process for insurance upon being denied, oh, your doctor's going to appeal for you, but the patient, me, I have to sign this form approving them as an agent to appeal on my behalf. I had to sign it, send it to them. They took it was just everything. Nothing is easy. Everything is a process, and all's well that ends well. So I'm on this new medication.
Well, congratulations. I am, can't even imagine the feeling. This extended journey, the ups and downs, the bumps in the road, but through all of it, it seems like you've got a pretty incredible mindset.
No, thank you very much. I'll tell you what the weirdest part is as it pertains to this new medication. Is if all goes well, knock on wood, if all goes well, if all goes according to plan, I should say, then, I'll never have to worry about my tumor again. Whereas for the previous 15 years, I'm in constant, imagine yourself living in constant fear that's your next appointment in 3 months, your doctor's gonna be like, hey, bad news, there's some activity there, but to go back on treatment. That's the sort of Damocles, right, swinging over your head at all times. And the promise, the best case scenario is that this medication will keep my tumor at bay for the rest of my life. Maybe it won't be that, but that's the hope.
Well, to have that hope when the alternative was, for a decade and a half of, like you said, every 3 months, wondering what kind of news you might get, to have that type of hope. I could not be more optimistic with medical innovation, especially in the advent of AI. And I just have endless faith in that drug development system. And I'd love to see that you are benefiting from it firsthand. That's just incredible.
Yeah, it's exciting. I hope, and I have no proof in this, but I hope that this is just the first of many, many improvements, not just improvements, game-changing, quantum leaps forward where, I'm very fortunate in a lot of ways, but very fortunate that it is my specific type of tumor that responds to this medication. I would like a world where in the not too distant future, a lot of these medications come out for lots of different type of ailments and cancer specifically that change people's lives.
I love it. I am in no way psychic, but given my biotech background and what I've gone through personally with health issues, it seems like that definitely is on the horizon. So there's lots of reason for hope, not just for you, but for everybody. So as we wrap this up, I get messages from people talking about how they feel inspired, encouraged, just listening to stories from amazing people like you. What, if anything, would you tell people who are maybe going through something gnarly in their life, or maybe they've, as we mentioned, put their ladder and they've been climbing the ladder only to figure out that they're up against the wrong building. They need to change course. What kind of amazing Bryan Bishop wisdom would you give them?
I don't think I would call it amazing at all. It's funny when I occasionally will do a talk or a lecture or even a motivational, inspirational speech about my cancer journey and the things I've learned. I have a unique perspective, not a unique perspective. I have a unique foothold in this world, in that, I was in the comedy world for so long that when I give these talks, they're generally a little funnier than you might expect.
Good.
I think when people see cancer survivor on the docket, they're ready for 45 minutes of downers, and it is that, but it's also funny. I hope, and some of the things I talk about are like things not ever to say to a cancer patient. You know what I mean? Like everything happens for a reason. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't happen for a reason. That's not true at all. Don't ever say that. I know you mean well, but
not helpful.
Yeah. And the other one, it's another one is like, oh, you're so brave. And it's like, what choice do I have? I'm here and I'm fighting and I'm doing the treatment, but please don't think that I'm a brave person for that. Like, I'm just trying to, see tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
imagine that.
Yeah. My wisdom. Oh God, I don't have any wisdom.
That's okay. Pressure.
Yeah, there was something on my mind, but I do have a brain tumor, to be fair.
Fair enough. We will give you the pass. That is perfectly fair. Well, what I've taken away though is that, being public, sharing and figuring out, what fits best for you. Maybe it is sharing, maybe it's not. But my goodness, how many people I'm sure you've given hope to, again, as corny as that sounds, by sharing your journey, writing a book, even appearing on our little podcast. I appreciate it so much.
Oh my God, I'm so glad to do it and be invited, first of all. And hold on a second. Yes, I found what I was going to say. All right, I'll leave you and your listeners with this actual piece of wisdom along the lines of what not to say to a cancer patient. People often say, and they mean well. They say, just be positive. Just be positive. And it's like, listen, I know they mean well. I know that they're, they're talking about themselves as much as they're talking about you.
Yeah.
And what they really mean is not be positive. What they really mean is be resilient. Be resilient, because cancer is going to knock you down, and there are going to be bad days, and there are going to be bad weeks. And it's not about being brave, right? Like it's not about how brave you are or positive you are. It's how do you pick up the pieces? Mm-hmm. How do you put it back together when it feels like everything's falling apart, and your resiliency and how you're able to bounce back. That's the real test, and that's the real challenge.
Powerful.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks, Bish. Well,
if you want more of this, you can book me for your corporate speaking gigs. I'm happy to. Actually, did you see on social media when I was the keynote speaker at the American Brain Tumor Association's national conference last year? It was a real awesome moment, not just for the honor of speaking at this great organization, but also because it was kind of the culmination of the I mentioned my tumor recurrence and the treatment that I was on, and being able to get back in front of a crowd, and give a speech for an extended period of time was a real moment for me. And I've continued to improve and continued to welcome and look for opportunities to deliver the message and the stories. So if anyone listening would like to have me share my story, I'm happy to do it at your organization and your company or whatever you think is right.
I love it. How can they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Oh, I'm not really out there in the world. You can go to my website, bryanbishop.com, Bryan with a Y, and on social media, if you want to be entertained or see pictures of my lovely family, you can follow me at Bald Bryan. Again, Bryan with a Y, Bald Bryan on like Instagram and Twitter, things like that.
Perfect. We'll put it in the show notes. And when do I get to see you at a tailgate? When's your next?
It's so sad how
It is.
how my priorities have shifted. Maybe it's funny. If I had a son, I bet I would be at more games just because of probably their inherent interest in football. My daughter, gets annoyed when I watch football on TV. So, getting to a game is sadly a less and less frequent activity.
Okay.
That said, I have very fond memories of all those games. I used to have season tickets for 10 years in a row, man. Probably about 10 years. It was a great run and a lot of fun, but it's sad, but it's bittersweet because I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it's bittersweet how priorities change and you go to less and less of these things.
Rightfully so. I thought you were going to say it was sad how bad the team's doing. I agree with you there too.
That is sad, but that is less sad.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you again, my friend. I hope folks reach out to you. Great to reconnect, and I'm cheering you on. Congratulations on the great progress with the new medication. Thanks for today.
Great talking to you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights that will empower you on your journey towards abundance. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps others discover the secrets to an abundant life too. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn, Amy Silvis. Keep striving for your goals, nurturing your relationships, and embracing the adventure that is life. Until next time, we wish you an abundantly fulfilling day.